The plots deepen and another crazy ending. Let's talk about Foundation Season 2, Episode 7, A Necessary Death. Hey everyone, it's David Stark from Watcher Pass, and I'm here to talk to you about Foundation Season 2, Episode 7, A Necessary Death, which is coming to Apple TV Plus on August 25th, 2023. This follows the insane ending of Season 2, Episode 6, Why the Gods Made Wine, where we found out why the gods created wine, and also found out that Harry Seldon was drowned by Tellum. Does episode 7 kind of ramp this up even more? Well, yeah, surprisingly, it does. My hot take is I definitely think you should watch this one. It's another good Foundation episode with some plots that deepen even further, some more intrigue, and another crazy ending. So I definitely think you should watch it. If you haven't gotten on the Foundation train yet, the series is starting to get really, really good. This season is really, really good. I didn't love it at the start, but after all the initial setup, I've really loved it. The last few episodes have been really good, and episode 7 is no different. So I'm going to tell you a little more about the episode, a few things I liked, a few things I didn't like, and then quickly go into a recap. So as you can imagine, there'll be spoilers in the recap section. If you don't want to know what happens in this episode, I would turn it off when I get to the recap. Before, I'll keep it vague, I'll keep it spoiler-free. I'll let you know when I get to those spoilers. So in episode 7, you have all the storylines kind of continuing from episode 6 with more intrigue. You have some additional intrigue between Empire and Sareth on Trantor. You have Brother Constant and Polly Verisov continuing their journey to try to make diplomatic relations again on Trantor. On Ignis, you have some sinister intrigue between Tellum and Salvor / Gaal. And you also have the return in this episode of Hober, Mallow, and Riose. We get to see what they've been up to. We get to see some of their kind of travels. It was a really packed episode, but it was a really good one. So things I liked about this episode. The first, I liked the plots. There were several plots that kind of deepen in this episode. They get more dangerous, they get kind of further along, they get a little bit more crazy, and I really enjoyed it. I really like how this season is progressing, and it makes me really excited for the last 3 episodes. I bet there's gonna be a lot going on, especially when A Necessary Death happens now. I don't think it's gonna be the last one, but we'll have to keep watching to find out. The second thing I love, look, I love the intrigue. It's kind of related to the plots, but it does feel like a lot of the characters are playing multiple angles here. You get some reveals in this episode where some of the characters either seem to know more than they're laying on, or at least project that they know more than they're laying on. And it feels like there are a lot of threads being pulled in the various factions, and sometimes you don't really know who is kind of pulling those threads. So I really like that. I liked kind of how it feels like everything is getting a little bit more complicated, and that makes all that setup that we did at the very start, which I complained about, all worth it, because now we have some really interesting and impactful stories. The third thing I love, look, I love the sinister feel. One of the stories in this episode, one of the kind of areas that we explore really feels very sinister. In Ignis, it feels like there is this kind of overly beautiful exterior, but then just under the surface, it feels like there is more going on. It feels like there was a lot that is darker and more kind of like dangerous than you expect. You kind of already knew that because of what happened to Harry in episode 6, but in this episode, it kind of ratchets that up a little bit. It had a very kind of Midsommar feel. If you haven't seen Midsommar, I love that movie. It is a fantastic horror film, but you get a similar sense of it. You get like this wonderful place that has a lot of bright colors, a lot of like white robes. People are dressed in like very beautiful white robes in that movie, but there's a lot going on that's a little bit more dark, a little bit more deadly, a little bit more scary than you kind of initially think. You get that same feel in Ignis. I love how everything feels like bright and wonderful and beautiful, but just under the surface, you can see that there's maybe a little bit more going on here. And the last thing I love, look, I loved the ending. Again, you had a really great ending in this. It was not just like the big aha ending. There was a whole sequence at the end that had a bunch of big aha, like crazy moments that kind of make me hopeful that the rest of the season is going to just keep ratcheting up and keep getting more and more interesting. So that is Foundation Season 2, Episode 7. It comes to Apple TV Plus on August 25th, 2023. Definitely check it out if you haven't gone on the Foundation train. Hurry up, get along, get caught up. You still have time to catch up before the last 3 episodes. There's only 3 episodes left in this season, so definitely catch up as quickly as you can because it's starting to get really, really good. I'm going to go into a recap now, so if you don't want to happen to this episode, I would turn it off now because there will be spoilers. So even though the big kind of crazy ending of episode 6 was on Ignis, I'm going to save Ignis for last because, again, that is a very interesting place, and it's one of the kind of more, I don't know, meaty parts of this episode. I'm going to start with Hober Mallow because one of the things I didn't love about episode 6 is we just get a little brief introduction to Hober Mallow. I was excited to see him, and then all of a sudden, that was it. You just got a little taste of Hober, and then that was all he saw in this episode. Well, this time, we get a little bit more time with him. In episode 6, Hober Mallow jumped to the exact spot where the Spacer fleet, I guess, jumped also. And Hober was captured and brought into like the Spacer flagship where he met with Shia's censor, who is kind of like the representative of the, I guess, the home swarm, this group, this like race of synthetics who were created by the Empire years and years ago and are now kind of like bound in service of the Empire. The Empire sends them this like essentially like oil that they need to survive, and in return they send the Empire 10% of their children to be used as navigators on the Emperor's jump ships. You need these like synthetics to be able to kind of calculate the jump routes, and so the Empire takes their children and sends them oil so that they can survive. Now, when Hober meets with Shia's center, he comes with a proposal from Harry Seldon and Foundation. He brings them a vial of this oil that they need, which is called Opalisk, that Foundation has been able to create. Now, the Spacers haven't been able to figure out how to create this. They only can get it from the Empire, but it seems like Foundation is now able to create their own version of this. And he offers them their own supply if they will join with Foundation to fight the Empire. And it seems like Shia's center contemplates this for a little bit, but then decides against it. She says essentially like the risk is too great. 10% of their children is a terrible, terrible price. But if they lose, the Empire could wipe them out, or they could start demanding 20% of their children, which would be an even greater deficit to their overall being. So she rejects Hober's proposal, and in the process also sends a message to the navigator on Destiny, which is the ship that Riose is on, telling her, or kind of communicating with her, that they have Hober, they're holding it, and they're going to come to Destiny to kind of give Hober over to the Empire. So when Bell and Glawen arrive, Hober is given to them, and they start to ask questions about the ship that Hober had. It's called a Whisper ship. And in this episode, you get a little bit more insight that maybe Foundation's technological abilities have really kind of jumped the Empire's. You don't really get that sense from Foundation itself because it seems almost like an imperial, like an outpost essentially. It doesn't seem like they have a ton of capabilities, but this episode you really get to see that maybe Foundation's technological capabilities have even surpassed that of Empire. They're able to manufacture Opalisk, which is that synthetic material that the Spacers need. Their Whisper ships are apparently more advanced than the Empire ships. They're more nimble, and they can jump without Spacer navigators and in much smaller, tighter areas. So it seems like Foundation's technological capabilities have surpassed even Empire, which makes you think that maybe this war that appears to be brewing might actually be in Foundation's favor. So Bell and Glawen demand information from Hober about his ship, and he's like, I don't like even own the ship. It's not even mine. Like, it's called a Whisper ship, and it's advanced, but I don't know anything about it. But you know what they do have? They come with this robust security system, and that's when he opens up the Whisper ship, and out pops Becky, the like demon dog thing, this like wonderful pet that looks also like a demon. But it comes in, it knocks out Bell, it knocks out Glawen, and it feels like it's about to kill Glawen when Hober calls Becky back. And so Becky comes back to the ship, Hober gets in, he escapes from the Spacer ship, and he's about to jump, and everyone in there's like, oh, there's no way he can jump, like he doesn't have the space. But like I said, Foundation's technology seems to be better than Empire's, and so he jumps. It causes like a shockwave in the Spacer ship, but no one seems to get killed, and Hober escapes. So after this, Bell asks Empire like what he should do next, and Empire doesn't really give him orders for the next step. It kind of like slow plays him for some odd reason. We don't know why. But after this, Glawen, Bell's husband, kind of wants Bell to like disobey Empire's orders, and seems like Glawen wants Bell to like take out Empire itself. And this is an insane idea because Empire seems super strong, but like I said, in this episode, you get to feel that maybe Empire is not as strong as it's projecting. Maybe Foundation could put up a good fight, and maybe if Bell joined them, maybe that would be kind of something that would tip the scales. Bell says no. Bell does not want to disobey orders. He disobeyed orders before. He was thrown into prison for years and years and years. And basically, there was a really good scene where like he and Glawen were fighting. He says, I'm not going to disobey orders. And Glawen's like, what? Are you afraid they'll kill you? And he's like, no, I'm afraid they'll kill you. And then they'll throw me in a cell with a holographic projection of you dying over and over again for decades. And they'll like put screens on the back of my eyelids, essentially, so make me see it all the time. So I'll be tortured with that memory for decades. And they'll still find someone to do the order anyway. So no, I'm not going to disobey orders. I really love that scene. It was a really good emotional scene, just showing like how twisted Empire is, and also how like scared Bell is of that. But then also Bell is worried that if Empire falls, like it's not going to become Foundation ruling the universe. It's going to fall into chaos. Like Foundation, he doesn't think is strong enough to take over where Empire is. And so it just means that all those planets that Empire kind of like oversees would fall into chaos. The weak would be taken advantage of. The strong would like basically kill the weak or do worse, and the entire universe would fall into chaos. So what's going to happen? Well, You don't really know, but it feels like there will be further conflict between Bell and Glauan. I bet later on there will be some sort of big moment where either Bell decides to rebel against the Empire or Glauan chooses to join against the Empire, maybe like puts him at odds with his husband. It feels like they are setting that up, and it also feels like Foundation might be putting up a bigger fight later in this season than I first anticipated. So I'm excited to see where that goes. Now, going to Trantor, where we have Brother Constant and Polyverosov. Remember, at the end of episode 6, they were captured by Empire, and now we see that they were thrown in a cell. And they're just kind of like waiting out their time. Remember, they wanted to go and open diplomatic relations with Empire. Well, they are waiting in a cell. Eventually, they get to go before Brother Day, and that is when Polyverosov tries to offer an alliance with Empire. And Brother Day is like, you projecting peace, but you are like in the shadows preparing for war. And that's when you reveal that the Spacers have rejected Hober Mallow's offer, which was from Harry Seldon, to join Foundation to rebel. And so Brother Day is like, look, you come here saying you want peace, but you're actually preparing for war. And that's when he notices Brother Constant seems to have like this angry look on her face. And he invites her to say, what she has to say. And that is when a projection of Harry Seldon, like, kind of comes out of her, like holographically projects on top of her. And it's Harry. Harry is there, at least some form of Harry is there, either through like a video link or some part of his consciousness was implanted into Brother Constant somehow. But Harry is there and he's talking to Empire. And basically he says, look, like Foundation has arms and technology to win this battle. Like we're asking for peace, not because we're worried about war, but because we know we'd win it. And so he is basically just like telling Empire, look, we're offering you peace. If this comes to it, we will fight and we will win. But we first want to try to like avoid all that and just get sovereignty right now. So then Brother Day tells General Rios, like, hey, look, it sounds like they've got technology worth taking. Form a barrier around Terminus and take whatever technology they have. And then he like uses his troops to like shock Brother Constant and Polyverosov, essentially to like disrupt whatever technology Harry Seldon is using to be there. It seems to work. They both collapse. You think for a second that maybe Brother Constant is dead from this, but she's not. She's alive, but Harry is no longer there. And then Brother Day has Brother Constant and Polyverosov taken to their cells. So it seems like whatever plan they had, maybe it didn't work, although maybe it did. It seems like Harry is always playing a little bit ahead. He seems like he's playing a few moves ahead. So perhaps this was just for him to kind of get a face-to-face with Brother Day. We will see what happens, and we'll see also if maybe there are some other tricks up Brother Constant's sleeve. But that is what happens to Brother Constant and Polyverosov. Now, also on Trantor, you have Queen Sareth, who starts to kind of have her own plots going. She's always had plots, but now it really seems like she is starting to ramp them up. She is getting ready to be wed to Brother Day, and in this, she is learning more and more. One of the things that happens is she is about to be checked to make sure that she is fertile, to make sure she can actually bear children. Because remember, her and Brother Day are going to get married. They are going to stop the genetic dynasty and start a kind of like, I don't know, natural dynasty, birth dynasty, whatever you want to call it. And if she can't bear children, well, that'll be a big problem for their plans. So she's getting an examination to make sure she can bear children. She is. And then they are about to harvest her eggs. And she's like, no, no, no. Like, not until we are actually wed. You not get my eggs until we're actually wed, which makes sense, right? Like if they have her eggs, there will be no need for her for their birth dynasty plan. So she holds them off. And through this all, Queen Sareth is being very confrontational with Demerzel. She is like revealing things. Like she reveals that she knows that Demerzel and Brother Day have this little sexual arrangement. Then she doesn't care. Like they can still have their tryst as long as she is made Empress. And after this interaction, after she tells the fertility doctor, whatever you want to call it, like, no, 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 you cannot get my eggs yet, Demerzel sends everyone away, to which Queen Sareth says, okay. And that is when Demerzel basically reveals like that she killed Queen Sareth's family. There was this big question throughout, like who killed Queen Sareth's family? Was it Empire? Was it someone else? And Demerzel doesn't specifically say it, but she basically says like she killed the family. She like burned them alive with the cold precision that she puts forth in every one of her jobs. And so this, Queen Sareth kind of puts a strong face on, but this definitely shocks her. So later, to kind of like keep her plots going, she says that she needs to meet Dawn where the walls can't hear her. So they meet in this like old tunnel in Trantor, Queen Sareth and Brother Dawn, and they wear like these holographic disguises to make sure they're not recognized. But it's still a very dangerous meeting. And she confides in Dawn that like she thinks that Dawn is different from Brother Day. We've seen that before. Like we've seen that the genetic dynasty might not be as specific as possible, especially because there was a mutation introduced earlier. So it seems like all the brothers are slightly different. But then she sees it as well. She says that Dawn's eyes aren't the same as Brother Day's eyes. And like she can't bear like Brother Day's children. Like she thinks he's a monster. She's worried that their children would be monster. But she says, like, I will still marry Brother Day. I'll become Empress. But what if my children had your eyes? And Brother Dawn's like that's not possible. And that's when Queen Sareth reveals that she grabbed one of like the sterilization reversers. Like our Empire are sterile, and so there's a special tool that can reverse it. She tells Brother Day it's not very painful. I bet it's really painful. But she says you could reverse your procedure and ensure that your legacy lives on. Like Brother Day has essentially cut out Brother Dawn from any future legacy. His genetic line is not going to continue. It's going to be some sort of mixed genetic line. So he has basically cut out Brother Dawn from everything in the future of Empire. And so she says, if we have a kid, like your legacy will be preserved, your future will be preserved. You'll be living on through that. This seems to appeal to Brother Dawn. Also, the thought of having a child with Queen Sareth seems to also appeal to him. He seems to really like her. And so we will see. He basically tries to refuse. He says, no, this is a death sentence. And she says, like, no, it's not a death sentence. It's a bloodless coup. So that is all the other things going on. Let's go to Ignis for the meat and potatoes of this episode. So on Ignis, we've got Gaal, Salvor, no Harry. Remember, Harry was killed at the end of the last episode. You get to see some scenes in the village. You get to see some scenes with Laurent. Laurent seems to like Salvor. They seem to kind of flirt a little bit. It's fun. Laurent was the one that took on Salvor's old husband's face earlier. And so they kind of joke about that. But one of the big things that happens is that the village people are out fishing, and they get these mollusks. They look kind of like mini squids, essentially, or mini, I don't know, flying fish. They're an interesting animal. And they're preparing these for a feast. So most of the ships are out fishing. They're getting these mollusks. But there's one ship further off that seems to be kind of like on a secret mission. It kind of comes in late. Laurent looks at it. Salvor looks at it. But you don't really know what it's doing. But it seems like they have a very different mission. Also, when they take these mollusks, they're starting to cook them. And when they end up cooking them, they throw them in boiling water, which is how you make a lot of seafood. It's probably not very nice for the seafood, but it makes it taste good. Now, when this happens, both Gaal and Salvor are hit with this mental scream that happens, and it hurts them. It jostles their brains. It is not happy for either of them. And it seems, and what Tellum says is that their powers are increasing. Their ability as mentalics are getting stronger, and so they're starting to kind of hear more, feel more, see more. And Gaal and Salvor was like, "Why would you want this? This is terrible." And Tellum's like, "No, it's just the truth. You are feeling the truth. It doesn't change what is happening to them, but you are now just understanding it." Now, during this time, Gaal seems to be kind of embracing her role as the next leader of the Mentalics. During the dinner, they ask Gaal about the mule, and she tells them about the mule, but then she also gives this great speech where she talks about how Harry has taught her to predict the darkness, and now she thinks that they are all brought together to kind of fight the darkness, to kind of overcome it. She says that the Empire is going to fall, and they need to be ready for whatever happens after Empire, and also they need to be ready for when the mule comes in 150 years. So she seems to really be embracing her role as leader. Now, Salvor doesn't seem to be embracing Gaal's role as leader. She seems to be concerned, and so she sneaks out to go see that ship that came over, and we all noticed it. You don't really know why. It just looked a little off. Well, now we find out why. Salvor is looking at the ship, and we find that its nav data was completely erased. I'm like, that's weird. But she's able to find some backup information through this box on the ship. And Gaal interrupts her when she's doing this, and Salvor basically says when that ship came in, I wasn't able to use my predictive abilities. Salvor is able to flip a coin and know exactly what face it's going to show up on. But when that ship pulled up, she wasn't able to. So she said that they were blocking her abilities at that moment, probably so she wouldn't try to figure out where that ship had come from. And so she thinks something else is going on here. Gaal tells Salvor that she has to trust Gaal and that there are things happening that Salvor can't understand. And then Salvor basically says essentially, this is all getting to your head. Don't let it get to your head. It's okay to be called special, but don't believe you're special. Which, I don't know. Gaal does seem pretty special. Gaal, I mean, she can see the future. That seems pretty special. So maybe she is. But I think Salvor's point is stay grounded. Don't let this place overtake your thinking. Still be you. Gaal tells her that you don't have to trust them. You don't have to trust the Mentalics, but you have to trust her. And remember, I said earlier, I love the kind of Mentalics area in Ignis, this whole settlement. It has a very midsummer feel. It has this beautiful white look to it, this beautiful, bright look to it, but you can tell that things are not great under the surface. In this episode, you see a lot of them are fairly quiet. Now, maybe that's because they can all communicate with their minds, but it doesn't seem like everyone is very happy. It seems like people are like working and doing what they need to. Their robes, which were, I think, so white and like bright earlier, they start to look a little bit more stained, a little more dirty. You see a lot more dirt on them in this episode. I don't know if it was like that earlier, or maybe I'm just noticing it, but I thought that those were all nice touches to make this place feel a little bit more sinister, a little bit more kind of dangerous than you were originally led to believe. So Salvor can't sleep because she wants to know why they would erase the data, the nav data from a fishing ship. Why would they try to hide that from her? So she gets up late at night, she gets her gun, and she goes to that ship. The history was erased, but she was able to hack it, and they still had the nav data. So none of the past history was in there, but where that ship went was able to be recreated. And so she gets on that ship, she goes out into the ocean to kind of retrace that ship step. And the ship looks like a catamaran. It's pretty cool. It has like, you know, two, I don't know, pontoons, whatever you want to call those, two floaty things, and then a space in the middle for Salvor to sit on. It navigates to its destination, and when it arrives, we see that it is the pool that Harry was being held in, this like pool prison where he's chained up and he's like floating on the water, and he can kind of breathe, but slowly water was spilling in with the tide, and eventually it overtook him and he drowned. Well, Salvor gets here, she looks inside, she sees Harry, and she like jumps in trying to save him, but she realizes he's dead. So not great, not a great situation. And then it gets worse because that is when Tellum shows up. And as Salvor is about to yell something to Tellum says no words, and she like stops Salvor from speaking. And then she says that sometimes a little death is necessary, and she unthinks Salvor's mind. When this happens, Salvor falls face down in the water, seems to drown, seems like she's going to drown along with Harry, and it seems like this might be the necessary death. That is the title of this episode. The camera kind of pans out, you see Salvor floating in the water, you see Harry floating in the water. It seems like Salvor will also now be dead. So that is the episode. That is the end of season 2, episode 7. Are they going to be able to keep this from Gaal? It seems like that would be a pretty big thing to keep from Gaal. Harry leaving is one thing because he was not welcome. Like Gaal made pretty clear that Harry wasn't welcome. And they kind of showed Harry leaving through, you know, someone pretending to be Harry and flying away in their ship. Salvor would be different. Salvor was one of them. Salvor is a mentalic. Salvor has the abilities, and Salvor is very close to Gaal. I don't know how they are going to hide that from Gaal, especially as her mental powers are growing, but I think that might be part of what's happening. I think that might be a big confrontation that'll be happening, or Gaal will hear Salvor suffering while she's drowning and, you know, figure out what's happening, come to her aid, and that might force a confrontation between Tellum and Gaal. I think something's going to happen. I don't think they're going to be able to keep this from her, but we will see. We'll find out next episode. But that is season 2, episode 7. It comes to Apple TV Plus on August 25th, 2023. Definitely check it out. I think it's a really good one. I'm excited to see where this series goes. So thanks so much for watching. If you like this review, please like and subscribe to this channel. It helps me out a lot. Make sure all my new content goes straight to you. Thank you.